Okay, morning everybody.
Morning, Paul.
Great. Hi everyone. Great to get the opportunity to see you again. And now we're the far side of Christmas and heading towards the exam. So as Declan said, it's bank holiday weekend, so I'll get straight into it and try to rattle through it as quickly and efficiently as possible. But at the same time, I suppose I want to give you a good flavor as to what it is we're going to be looking for when you do the real exam, because it will help. So while we'll try and get through it as quickly as possible, we'll spend a bit of time at the same time trying to give you a good idea as to what it is we're looking for. Because the more of the idea you have, the better chance you have of delivering it, I suppose, and the better chance you have of delivering it, the better result you'll get. So everyone will be happy with that. So what I'm going to do is this: I'm not going to spend any time on the MCQs. Okay. What I will do on the MCQs is when we're finished this session, I will email you the answers. Okay. And you can go down through them, and then if you have any questions in relation to any of it, I'm obviously around. I'm not going anywhere, so just drop me an email, and I'll be happy to come back to you with any questions you have on that. Okay, so that'll take care of the MCQs. Okay. What I am going to spend the time on is I will take you through the four longer questions that are in the mock exam, which hopefully you've had a chance to maybe have a bit of a look at. I'll take you through those four questions, okay? Give you an idea if those four questions were to come up in the main exam, what it is we'd be looking for from you, okay? Then I'll put the mock exam away. So I mean, hopefully those four questions will take about maybe 40 minutes, but they have been known to go on a bit longer, but that's kind of the guideline as to what I'll aim to spend on it. Then I'll put the mock exam away. I will take out the real one. I won't share it, but I will take out the real one, and I'll give you an idea as to what sort of questions are going to be coming up in the real one to try to narrow down the material a little bit so you don't have to study everything, okay? Now, just while it's in my head, the one thing I will say is you will have to study everything to get the MCQs, okay? Because the MCQs cover all four modules, and they do get into most of the nooks and crannies of every module as well. But in relation to the longer ones where you might need to know it in a bit more detail and maybe having a couple of examples ready, we'll give you some ideas to what's coming up, so you may be able to reduce the amount of study you need to cover off. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So getting straight into it, on the longer questions. So the first longer question in the mock exam was, write a welcome letter for a business to send to another business. Okay, so nice and short in terms of an actual question. Write a welcome letter for a business to send to another business. Okay, and there is a sample of a welcome letter that you might send to another business on page 59 of module 1. Okay, so page 59 of module 1, you don't need to go to it now, but if you are looking for a sample letter, that is where you will find it. Okay, and I'm going to call it up on the screen in a couple of minutes. Actually, I'm going to call it up. I'm going to call it up now. Let me just let's click share, and then hopefully you'll be able to see it. Okay. Are you guys able to see a Word document on screen?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Yeah. So this is the letter that appears on page 59. So we'll just quickly go through it. But what I will do is I will tell you, what's in it, but I'll also tell you why what is in it is important. So why we actually take the time to put those actual words in the letter. Okay. So the start of the letter is your new account, dear so-and-so, your new account has just been opened and we look forward to doing business with you. My name is Paul and I'll be looking after your account. Okay, so not fairly straightforward. I mean, what you're doing there is you're just introducing yourself. But I mean, I suppose the added benefit of introducing yourself is, I mean, I have heard it over the years that kind of, when you contact somebody and you say, okay, listen, your account is overdue, they say, well, no, we didn't know who to talk to. We lost the details. We didn't know who the phone number was. We didn't know who's responsible for the account. You're actually putting a name there. Now, I mean, I know that each collections department is maybe a bit different, but assuming you're part of a collections department where there is somebody who's nominated to manage the account, you can put in, okay, my name is Paul and I'll be looking after your account. Okay, but what you're doing is you are nominating and say, okay, I'm the person you talk to in the event that you need something. Okay, and there's a bit more of that as the letter goes on. Okay. The second point we put in is your invoices will be sent to, and we put in the actual address. we understand that you have or you have not got a PO order system in place, and I will ensure your requirements are complied with from this end. Okay. So what you're doing there is you're doing a couple of things. You're indicating where the invoices are going to be going to. Okay. You're indicating what your understanding is of whether or not they have a PO system. And you're also saying, I will ensure your requirements are complied with from this end. So what you're doing there is you're removing excuses for not paying on time. Okay. A lot of times when people don't pay on time, they say, okay, but I never got the invoice. Okay. What you're saying there is this is where we're going to be sending the invoices to. Okay. If there's something wrong there, that gives the person who gets the letter an opportunity to say, well, hang on, no, that's not where the invoices should be going to, or you're proposing to send hard copies, whereas I need them in email format. You're calling out what you're going to do there. Okay. And then the second thing you're calling out is what your understanding is of their PO order system, whether they have one or not. Okay. And though what you're doing there is you're not completely removing it, but you are making it just that little bit harder for two of the most common excuses for non-payment to be made later on. Okay. Because if they are made later on, it doesn't remove it, but you can point to the letter and say, okay, but we did say to you, this is where the invoices are going to be going to, and this is where this is our understanding of a PO order system. Why are you now raising that there's a problem? Why are you now raising that there's a problem with the PO order? Or why are you now raising the purchase order? Or why are you now raising that there's a problem with where the invoices are being sent? Okay, so you're gently removing excuses for non-payment. Okay. The third thing we say is we pride ourselves on the accuracy, timeliness, and the clarity of our invoicing. Okay, so that's could come across as maybe a kind of slightly throwaway kind of comment, but there's actually very specific reason why you're putting it there. So we pride ourselves on the accuracy, the timeliness, and the clarity of our invoicing. Okay, so what you're saying there is we're going to get it right. Okay, all right. Now, you mightn't get it right 100% of the time, but you are saying you pride yourselves on it. So you are establishing the facts that you are going to get things right 99+% of the time. Okay. Which is kind of beginning to say, okay, if there's going to be issues with non-payment, the issue is more likely going to be on the customer's side than on yours. Okay. So it's an important statement to make. Should you have any issues and require any additional information to make your job easier, please let me know on my direct line, which is the following, and I will do everything to help. So again, in the very first little paragraph, you said, okay, I'm Paul and I'm going to be responsible for your account. Now you're giving them a direct line. So again, all the time you're removing excuses for non-payment. I didn't know who to call. I had a problem, but I have a query. I didn't know who to call, so I didn't pay. The name and the phone number are on the welcome letter. Okay. And okay. I'm realistic. I've worked for very large collections teams, and it's not always going to be a scenario where Paul's exact number is going to be there. But if it's a group email box, or if it's a phone number that comes through to a number of different people, you will be called. You can call that out there. Okay, so you make it easier for the customer to reach you if they have any issues they need to resolve or any questions. Okay. The next bit we're putting in is our credit terms are, and we state clearly what the credit terms are. Okay. And as we said in the notes, there's no point putting kind of, strictly net 30 days. You do need to be clear on, is it 30 days from the invoice date, the delivery date? Is it the 28th of each month, or what is it? So that's an opportunity for you to put very clearly what your credit terms are. Okay. And we look forward to receiving your payment each month on or before that date. Okay. Very clear what your expectations are. In response to your request, we are delighted to extend you a line of credit of whatever it is. Should you wish to revise this facility at any time, please let me know. Okay. So again, you're clarifying, you're removing the surprises from the equation. You're making it clear that the credit line is going to be 20,000 or 1 million or whatever it is it's going to be, and that'll give you an opportunity for them to operate within that line of credit. Now, discussion has come up as to whether or not this may vary company to company. Some companies prefer to share the line of credit. Some would prefer not to. Okay. My philosophy is no surprises is best. Okay. So you don't want surprise, and it is an opportunity to remove potential conflict between you and the customer when they ring up angrily and saying, I haven't got my order, and why is it that I'm over why is it that I haven't got my order, and you have to explain that you're over the credit limit. Again, it's an opportunity to set your stall out from the beginning that this is the way things are going to operate. Okay. So it's a fairly, if you look at the letter itself and you don't overly think about it, it comes across as maybe just a fairly standard letter. But there are actually, as I've said in there, kind of 6 points as to why we're putting things in there, okay? And in terms of the, if this question were to be on the main exam, obviously getting all those points in is key. If you take the time and maybe just quickly explain why you put in those ones, then you really are going to be heading for the top marks. Okay. So that's the type of thing we're looking for.
Could we get a copy of that, Paul?
It's on page 59 of the notes.
Oh, that's the same one.
Word for it. It's the same one. Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay. 59 the notes, module 1. So you have it word for word.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay. So if there's no questions on question 1, if you think of any afterwards, you can come back to them, but I'll move on to question 2, okay? So I've stopped sharing now. That was the only one that I just wanted to kind of put up on screen, okay? So question 2 in the mock exam is, what information should be obtained on a new account application form or a new customer information sheet? You can use either a consumer or a trade form. Please state which one you're using as part of your answer, okay? So we're going to cover the 2 of those off. Okay, so there's a trade application. You could do a trade application form, or you could do a consumer one. Okay, so we're going to cover the 2 of them off. I'm going to explain to you some of the things that we'll be looking out for, but also more importantly, why we're looking for them. Okay. So in terms of where to find this information in the notes, the trade application form, that is covered on pages 26 to 37 of module 1. And then the consumer application form is a little bit later. That comes that's covered in pages 45 to 50. Okay. So trade application form, pages 26 to 37. The consumer one is covered pages 45 to 50. Okay. And we're going to cover the 2 of them off now. Okay. But I'm going to start with the trade application one. Okay. So business to business application form. So for me, there are 3 things we're looking for in a business-to-business application form. Okay, there's a lot of information you can put in there, but in reality, there's 3 things overall that we're looking for, and a number of the items are in it. Roll up to provide us with this information. The first thing that we're looking for in a trade application form is, have we collected enough credit information to adequately manage the risk of trading with this company? Okay, so we're going to be asked, I'll give you examples now in a minute, but we're going to be asking questions which will give us an idea, okay, who is it we're dealing with, okay? Very early in module 1, we're talking about credit being to trust someone. You're going to trust someone to pay you back at a later date. What information do we need to get them so that we trust them, okay? I'll give you some examples of that in a minute, okay? The second thing we're looking for is, similar to the letter, are we removing excuses for them not paying by the due date, okay? So we want to ask a number of questions that will cover off the excuses, so that if they come back later and say, oh, I have a problem with the PO, or I have a problem with the invoicing, we can point to the credit application form. It doesn't it doesn't remove them completely, but we can point to them and say, okay, but yeah, you indicated on your application form that this is the way you wanted the invoicing done. This is the PO system. We're just making it that little bit harder for them to come back later and say, well, because of that, we couldn't pay on time. We're just making that a little bit harder, okay? So I'll give you some examples of that in a minute. And then the third thing is, okay, in the event of things going wrong and you don't receive the payment on time, have we enough contact details so we can go and collect the money, okay? So all of that should be on the application form. So if we cover off the first one, what sort of credit information are we looking for? So what sort of questions are we going to ask? We're going to ask their legal name, okay? So we'll have their trading name and so on, but we will ask them, okay, what's the legal name? So if things go really wrong, we know who to chase legally, okay? What type of business is it? Is it a sole trader? Is it a limited company? Is it a partnership, or is it something else? Okay. What type of company are we dealing with? Because as is stated in module 1, there are advantages and disadvantages to dealing with each type. Okay. So what type of company are we dealing with? Has the company traded under any other name in the last 3 years? If it's a sole trader, what's the name of the sole trader? What's the home address of the sole trader? And do we have some contact details there? Okay. What sort of spend does the customer estimate they're going to make with us every month? Okay, there's no point in having a credit line of $1 million if they're only going to spend 10,000 at any one time. Okay, you can work to kind of get them up to the $1 million if you think that's what they can afford. But you don't want to have a credit line of $1 million just sitting there when in reality a credit line of 100,000 might be enough. Okay, so what do they how much do they expect they're going to spend with you every month? Okay, and you can use that to feed into the credit line. How long have they been in business? Okay, if they've been in business a year, chance of them being in business in a year's time is maybe, unfortunately, a bit not as good as if they've been in business for 49 years. Chance of them making year 50 is probably pretty good. Okay. Do they own or do they lease the premises? Okay, and then the trade references. There's a lot of stuff in there. A lot of stuff in there that feeds into the line of credit, into us asking the question: do we have enough information to extend credit to this company? Okay, all of it feeds into the risk. Okay. The second thing we're going to ask is, okay, have you requested enough information to remove excuses for them not paying by the due date? Okay, so what sort of things are we going to ask there? We're going to ask, okay, the delivery address. Okay, what is the delivery address of the product should go to? Okay, there's no point because if they don't receive the product, you're not going to receive payment. Okay, so we are going to ask them, okay, where do you want the product delivered? Where do you want the invoices delivered? Okay, those are two very common reasons for customers not paying. Similar to the letter, do you have a PO system? Yes or no? What way do you want the invoices delivered? Do you want them delivered by post? Because if they are all piling up on somebody's desk waiting to be scanned, you're inevitably going to have a delay in terms of payment. Or should they be arriving by email? Okay, if they arrive by email, but again, the opposite. If they arrive by email and you need them by post, that's a problem. Somebody's going to have to come print them out. Okay, so we ask those questions. We cover all that off at the beginning. Do you require statements? Where should we send the statements? Do you require delivery dockets? Should there be VAT charged on the product? All of those things are live, real examples that I've seen many times in the past as to why people have not paid their invoices. And if you cover all that off in the credit application form, it just makes it a little bit harder for them to rely on them as excuses. Okay. Does this all make sense? Does it?
Yeah.
Yeah. All good. Okay. And then the third thing that we put in is quite simply, okay, if we don't get paid on time, do we have sufficient contact details to go and chase the person? Chase is not a word that Declan or I should be using, but do we have contact details so that we can contact people to discuss payment? Okay, so what you don't want to find is that you check the application form, the invoices are late, you're already under a bit of pressure, and you check the application form and there's no phone number. Okay, so you want to make sure that there's a number of phone numbers on there. You want accounts payable because they're the people that press the button to actually make the payment. You want the approver's phone number, okay, because they're the person who kind of says yes or no, I bought the product, or no, I did not buy the product, and therefore I authorize or I don't authorize payment. If it's a small company, you may also want an escalation point, such as the managing director. Okay, now there's no point looking for the managing director of Fortune 500 company. Okay, you're not gonna reach them. Okay, to say, well, I'm sorry, but my invoices haven't been paid. That's not really going to work. Okay, but if you're dealing with a company that maybe has 20 employees, reaching the managing director is perfectly realistic. Okay, as an escalation point if you're struggling. So you want email addresses, you want phone numbers, and you want a number of them. Okay. And you want, ideally, people from a number of different parts of the payment cycle. Okay. So all of that should be in your credit application form. Okay. So the example of it is on what pages did I say? Was it 46? Was it? Runs from pages 26. Runs from pages 26 to 37. All of that example and all of that information is in there. Okay, but those are the three key things that I'd be looking for if a fictitious credit application form were to be part of the exam. Okay. So I'll move on to consumer now in a minute, which is a bit narrower because there's certain things you see in consumer that you don't see in trade. Or sorry, it's more the other way around actually. But are there any questions on the trade one?
No.
No, we're good. Super. Okay. So the consumer application form. Okay, now the consumer has two of the three things. So what we were talking about in trade was we were saying, okay, do we have enough to manage the risk? Do we have enough to remove excuses for non-payment? And do we have enough contact details in the event that the invoice goes overdue? The reality in consumer is the majority of it falls into the first category and the last category. There's not an awful lot. The excuses, excuses in terms of paying tend to fall into kind of can't pay, won't pay, shouldn't pay. But I mean, you're not going to have a PO system if you're dealing with a consumer. You know, you can potentially put something in there in terms of, okay, well, how do you want to receive your statements or your invoices if applicable? But in general, they fall into two categories, which is, do you have contact details? Okay, so do you have the name? Do you have the current address of the person that you're selling the product to? Do you have contact details such as an email address, a mobile phone number? Less and less common now these days that you have a home phone number as well, but if they happen to have it, they may share it with you. You will frequently see, if you've availed this yourself as a customer, is it okay to contact you at work? So if you have a work number, they may put it in. Okay, there's no harm in putting them in. At worst, you will get not applicable or don't have one. Okay, so there is no harm in asking for them, but you want to have, it's less. There are less avenues in consumer that you can pursue than there is in trade, but you do want to make sure you have the contact details in there. Okay. And then the rest of the application form is primarily taken up with the first point, which is, okay, managing the risk, okay? You will ask kind of people's date of birth. Are they renting? Do they own their home? How long have they lived there? You know, what do they do for a living? How long have they done that for a living? I mean, again, similar to the companies, if the person is living in rented accommodation and they're there for less than a year, the chance of them still being there in a year's time is maybe a bit less than if they own their property. And I'm not getting into the kind of whether this is right or wrong, but this is realistic in terms of the managing the risk. Okay, if they are a homeowner and they've been living there for 10 years, pretty good chance they're still going to be there in year 11. If they've been renting and they're only there kind of 3 months, it does add to the risk. Same on the work front. Okay, if they're working there 20 years, there's a good chance they're probably still be there in year 21. If they're there 3 months, will they still be there in a year's time? It may be 50-50. Okay. Okay. Sorry, just see, is that on technical side? Is it? Bear with me 1 second. There we go. Okay. You guys still able to hear me? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. So just quickly in terms of the examples, so I'll just call out the general ones. I mean, in terms of the examples on the risk, well, I think I've kind of covered it up, but I mean, date of birth is in there, kind of number of dependents is in there, because, dependents, rightly or wrongly, will be competing for your money. Okay. So that is taken into consideration. How long are you living at the address, and what are your employment details? How long are you there? Who employed? Key one that I didn't share actually is how much money is coming in, how much money is coming in and how much money is going out. Okay, so if you are going to extend credit, you will be asking, okay, well, what do you earn? What is your take-home pay every month? And then what is also going to be competing for our money? Do you have credit cards? Do you have a car loan? Do you have rent? Do you have mortgage? Do you have an overdraft? Childcare costs, anything like that. Okay, so again, not getting into the rights or wrongs as to whether that's fair or not, or deemed to be fair, but it is the reality of that's what people will ask when they're on the credit side. How much money is coming in and how much money is going out? And based on that, a decision will be made. Can we extend credit or not? Okay. So a lot of detail. I mean, if that particular assignment, I mean, more so than the letter, there's a lot of detail that you write in that. Now, we're not expecting both, obviously. Pick, if that question were to come up, pick whether or not you're going to do a trade application form or consumer, depending on where you're more comfortable. We're not expecting both. Okay. And there will be no question asking you to compare one against the other.
Right.
Okay. So if everyone's good, we'll move on to question 3. Question 3 is describe in detail the steps you would take to improve the levels of cooperation and teamwork from the other departments in your business. Okay. So that is covered in module 3. That's the teamwork part of the attack model. Okay. And it is covered in pages 20 and 21 of module 3. Okay. Okay. So despite the fact there's not necessarily mountains of things on the notes in it, it is one that you could talk for quite a bit on. Okay. So I'll just take you through some of the parts of the business that you may well be engaging with when you work in credit or collections. First one to be marketing. Okay, so marketing will go off and they'll have these grand ideas of we're going to target this particular market because we feel there's money to be made and there's growth opportunities there, either on the consumer or on the trade side. So it might be a new demographic on the consumer side, or on the trade side, it might be a new geographical region, right? going to heavily focus on France this year, because we think it's an area of growth that we can engage in. Okay. So, I mean, your aim, if you're working with such a department, is your aim, first of all, is not to say no. Okay, you don't want to be the group that says, okay, well, no, God, I wouldn't go into France because here are some problems that we've nobody who speaks French or something like that. You don't want to start with that. Okay, what you want to say is, okay, well, yeah, we can do that, but these are some of the things we're going to need in order to do that. We're going to need somebody to to hire somebody who speaks French on the team, or we will need to send somebody off to do a training course in French. And the best example I can come up with is years ago. I had a client, and they decided they were going to expand into Africa. Okay, they had every other geography in the planet, maybe not necessarily saturated, but they were in every other geography. They wanted to significantly increase the amount of revenue they got from Africa. Okay, but the problem was that they wanted to apply a model that works successfully in Europe. So in Europe, it would not be unheard of at all for me to call somebody in Germany that I've never met and say, okay, here are your 3 invoices, and we need payment for those. Okay, and a lot of times you will get that. Okay, you will deal in phone, and you will deal by email, and you will usually successfully obtain payment. Okay, that's not now. Okay, now I'm generalizing. Africa is basically 50 countries. But in general, the feedback that we learned from this experiment was it was not common to use such models in a lot of countries in Africa. Okay, it was more common to do business face to face. Okay, you would do business face to face, and you would establish a relationship face to face, and then maybe after a certain number of meetings, you would switch to kind of phone and email, and that was necessary in order to get the relationship working. But a lot more face to face involvement was needed than was needed in Europe. Okay, so what we ended up doing was we ended up hiring collectors who were going to be based in certain countries in Africa, and they would spend 3 out of 4 weeks on the road, traveling to other countries, engaging with customers, and that was necessary in order to develop the payment relation, to develop a more successful business relationships. Okay, so what you need to do in such a scenario is you need to say, okay, yeah, you want to do that? Yeah, fine. These are some of the requirements that we feel we're going to need in order to make this successful. Okay. So that's marketing, or kind of business development, that kind of part of the business. Sales is obviously another one. Okay, nobody works in any sort of length of time in credit without having some dealings with sales. Okay, and yeah, it's mentioned a couple of times in the notes. Statistically, the way people see. The way people in sales see people in credit is, we'll go out and try and sell, and credit will say no to that customer, no to that customer, no to that customer. Okay, and that is, that traditionally is the relationship. But what we want to do is we want to flip that on its head. So what we want to do is build a relationship with sales so that on the 1st of February, for instance, they say, okay, these are the 30 customers that I'm planning on using this month to generate my sales targets. You can then have a look at them and say, okay, out of those 30 customers, 10 of them are a straightforward green. Okay, they're up to date. They're well within their credit lines of credit, and we would not expect any issues with them. There are 10 that are amber, where they're getting close to their lines of credit. They have invoices coming due in the next week or so, and historically they may have missed a payment or 2. And then there's the other ones which are red, kind of, well, these guys are already overdue, or they're already their line of credit. So either you need to find other customers to work with, or you need to proactively engage with these customers, or help me engage with these customers to ensure we get the overdue invoices cleared, and then you can sell the product to them. Okay, so that is the way we would look to deal with sales. Okay, so covered off in the notes, but that is the way we would look to deal with sales. Okay, another part of the business that we would deal with would be operations. Okay, and we deal with operations. There's 2, maybe 3 reasons why it is important to have the operations people on our side. First of all, we want them to process every order correctly first time. Okay, if they process every order correctly, our job is a lot easier. Okay, so that's the first thing we want to do. Second reason we want them on our side is, in the event that things go wrong, we want credit notes issued in a timely manner. Okay, we don't want to push to the bottom of the queue. Okay, we want the credit notes issued quickly so that we can credit the invoice, if necessary, issue a rebill, and then get payment for the rebill in a timely manner. And the third reason you might want to work closely with operations is, depending on your business, that can be where the master data is collected as well. Okay, So if the wrong address or the wrong name is on the account and so on, obviously your job later on is going to become more difficult. And in operations, I mean, it varies business to business, but I mean, speaking from my own experience, I found that our operations team were very, very quiet weeks 1 and 2 of the month, a little bit busier in week 3, and then out the door in week 4. Okay. So wherever possible, I would use them in weeks 1 and 2 to get the credit notes cleared. And then I would, in return, would provide support in weeks 3 and 4 so that they would come to me and say, okay, Paul, this order is blocked. Is there any realistic chance of that order being issued, or what would need to happen in order to get that order through? Okay, so I work with them closely in weeks 3 and 4 to get their orders through. And in weeks 1 and 2, when they're quieter, they will get their credit notes issued so that I make my targets as well. Okay. And the last one that we cover off, which is also in the notes, is service departments. Okay, so what you don't want, and you need to work closely with them, because what you don't want is a scenario where you are chasing invoices over and over again, and then the service department, who may only be the next floor up or down the hall, are providing brilliant service for your customer. Okay, so your customer is receiving brilliant service, but yet they're not paying their invoices. Okay, so you need a scenario. I mean, years ago, I worked on the customer service lines in Citibank. Calls would come through, and a red flag would pop up on the screen saying, right, this customer is overdue. So you do your security check, and then you would transfer them over to the collections team so that before they got any service from me, they would have to deal with the issue with the overdue invoices. Okay, so if that flag is not there, they would just over and over again, they get what they need from me, but they might be continually overdue. Okay. So that's the type of thing we're looking for in the event of question 3 coming up. Any questions on any of that? Super. Okay. Right. We'll move on to the 4th and final question then, and then I'll get on to the real business, which is why you're here, which is to find out what's on the real exam. Okay. But question 4 is, so this is one of the longer ones, and there's a fair bit of detail you certainly can put into this. But question 4 is, using specific examples from your own company, describe how you would ensure that a visit to one of your key customers was successful. You can either choose a visit which would involve a financial review with your customer, or a more general visit. Please indicate which option you have chosen. Okay. Now let me see. Okay, first of all, the pages. Okay, so in terms of the financial review meetings, which I'm not actually going to cover off, but I'll just talk more about that just in a minute. The financial review meetings details, they run from pages 8 to 13 in the notes. Okay. All right. So financial review. So how to conduct a successful financial review meeting, there from pages 8 to 13. This is module 4 we're talking about now at this stage. Okay. And in terms of the more general meetings, that's just before, I always read this thing correctly. In terms of the more general meetings, they run from pages 3 to 7 in the module. Okay. So in short, what you want to cover off is you want to cover off pages 3 through to 13. Okay. All right. So more general meetings is at the beginning, and then the financial review meetings are at the end. Now, in the interest of time, I'm not going to cover off the financial review meetings, okay? But they are there. They are there in the notes, pages 8 to 13, if you want to have a look at them, okay? What I am going to cover off is just 2 scenarios, which is the more general meeting, and then also how you would handle a meeting, which is to discuss unresolved queries, okay? So the more general meeting, first of all, I mean, in terms of how you handle it, first of all, it's not dissimilar, in terms of preparation, it's not dissimilar to a phone call for a large amount, okay? First of all, do your homework. What are the sales trends? What are the payment trends for this customer? Are they paying you on time? Are they ordering a lot of stuff? Are they ordering a lot of stuff in a particular chunk of the month and then maybe stretching it a bit late in terms of paying, when you look at their account in terms of the sales going in and the payments coming in as well, what do you see? Okay. Obviously you need to double check. Okay, so you're going to meet them. Okay, what is the balance at the moment? Are they due or are they overdue? Who is it you're meeting? Is anybody else likely to be joining them? What's their position in the company? How much credit do they have? Do they have orders on hold? Nothing too difficult, but information that's that if you don't have it going into the meeting, you're immediately starting at a disadvantage. Okay, so prepare a couple of things before you go. Okay. Arrive early at the meeting, explain traffic is lighter than expected, you're happy to wait, and listen up to what's going on in reception, okay? Everybody stops to talk to the receptionist and going to say things are good, things are bad. If you're hearing the receptionist fielding call after call after call from other suppliers saying, okay, sorry, he's in a meeting or she's in a meeting, you can't talk to them at the moment, I'll get them to call you back, you know, that's a bad sign, okay? Sign that other people are calling as well to try to get payment. So listen to what's going on, okay? People stop talking to the receptionist. You can hear one side of the conversations that are going on, get an idea, okay? Depending on whether you're visiting a warehouse or a factory, if it happens to be a warehouse or factory, ask if you can have a tour, okay? Can you get a tour beforehand, okay? And if you're in the warehouse, the key thing to find out is, okay, where do you keep where's your own stock, okay? If your stock is near the entrance, that means your product is moving very quickly, okay? And it means you're a key supplier of this company. If your stock is buried in the back and covered in dust and kind of looks like it hasn't been moved in a while, your negotiating position is maybe not as strong, okay? All right, so if you're close to the entrance and exit, you're in a strong position. If you're way back and hard to find, you're in a less positive position, okay? So in terms of what you're looking to find out in the meeting itself, I mean, you know, remember, you're always looking to get paid on time. That's always your aim, okay? And different companies will have different requirements and different processes to get you paid, okay? So I mentioned earlier, you know, accounts payable are the people that press the button, but somebody else will be the person who purchased the product, and he or she will give the nod or the thumbs up for the approval. You want to find out how the process works, okay? So if you're expecting payment on the 28th of every month, you know, you need to ask people, okay, well, you know, what's the latest you need to have the invoice approved? And they'll probably say 25th, maybe 23rd, maybe 21st, you know, it may well be a couple of days beforehand, okay? You know, they do their final checks and then they press the button there, or they send the payment on the 26th, so you get on the 28th. You need to find out what the process is, okay? And the aim is to meet as many people as you can involved in that process, okay? Try and meet the approver. What does he or she need to make things easy? What information do they need to make things easy? What do accounts payable need to make things easy? You know, the invoices coming in, hard copy, soft copy, all of that stuff all contributes to whether or not you get paid on time. So if you learn their process, they can, you know, the better chance you have of receiving payments on time. Okay, so learn all that. When you have completed the meeting, send minutes, okay, within 24 hours to the people that you met, okay, thanking them for the visit and agreeing the actions and when they're going to be done by, and also send a report to your boss, okay? You may have been gone for, you know, the morning, you may have been gone for the whole day, okay? You know, you need to justify what it was you were doing, okay? So do send it on to the boss and kind of said, okay, these are the actions that the customer is going to do, these are the actions we're going to do, these are things that we need from elsewhere in the organization, okay? So that's a general visit. So the last bit we're going to cover off in a minute is the queries and how we handle those. But on the general visit, do you have any questions? That's the type of stuff we're looking for in terms of an answer. No? Okay. Okay, we're good. We'll move on to the last piece then, which is the query resolution meeting. So query resolution meeting, a little bit different. So what you're going to do on this occasion is you need decision makers. You're going to be more the facilitator in this one. So I mean, in the general visit where you're meeting people and you're trying to find out as much as you can, you're going to be asking a lot of questions. In this scenario, you're going to be the facilitator. So regardless of whether you do it in person or whether you do it as part of an online meeting, you are going to, the people that you ideally want to get, if you have queries outstanding, you want to get their purchasing manager, okay? Because that's ultimately the person responsible for buying the product in the first place. And you also want to get your sales manager. You want to get the two of them in the room along with you, or you want to get the two of them on a phone call along with you, okay? And you are the facilitator, okay? So your job is to get as many issues as you can resolved, okay? But not necessarily to side with your company or to side with the customer, okay? So what you want to do is you want to get them together. You want to group the queries together, okay? And then you start with the ones which are having the biggest impact, okay? yeah, if they are the most complex, you may want to leave them to the end. But other than that, you want to start with the ones that are having the biggest impact, and then you work your way down through the ones that are having the next biggest impact and the next biggest impact, and so on. And what you're looking to do is this. You put forward the scenario, you then can effectively step back. You let the purchasing manager and the sales manager decide between them, okay, who's right and who's wrong, and what the problem is. And if you get agreement which is going to result in payment, you should get the purchasing manager there and then to sign the invoice, okay? Because you can then show that to their members of their team in the accounts payable department and say right, your purchasing manager signed it, so now you need to pay it. Or if it's a credit note, you need to get the sales manager to sign that and agree to a credit note, and you can then use that to get the credit note issued, okay? All right, because agreement has been reached, okay? And then what you want to do is you then want to say, okay, right, so we now have our problems resolved. What can we do to stop them happening again? Okay, how can we get things right first time so that there is no need for a future meeting and no need for invoices to go overdue, which then need to be credited. Okay, so that's the information and the type of detail that we're looking for should that scenario come up. Sorry, should that question, I suppose more relevantly for the exam, should that question come up? Okay. So that's the 4 of them. I don't have anything else to share with you in relation to the mock exam. It's just that's the standard of answer we're looking for. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put the mock one away, and I'm going to take out the real one. I'm not going to show it, obviously, but I will let you know what type of stuff is coming up on the real one. Okay. So
Okay.
again, before I forget, because it is important, okay, for the MCQs, okay, there's 50 of them and you have an hour to do it. So it's a little bit over a minute per question. So you will need to know the material reasonably well to know where to find the answers, or even better, know the answers without having to look for them in the material. Okay, it's open book test. Okay, but you don't want to have a scenario where you have to go looking for all 50 of them, because you will have a tough hour if you're going to have to hunt all of them down. There's no problem having to hunt down 10, maybe 10, 15, but if you have to hunt down all 50 of them, it's going to take you some time, okay? So you do want to have a good knowledge of everything from module 1 all the way to the end of module 4 in order to tackle the MCQs, okay? And if you score well in the MCQs, you really have set yourself up for a good result, okay? I have seen people get them all right, okay? Not many, but some people got them all right, and it's not unheard of to get 48, 49, or even 50 of them right. Okay, so there's the opportunity to set a very good base for yourself by doing well in the MCQs. Okay.
Many points do you get for the MCQs, did you say?
So the way it works is this: we mark the exam out of 100. Okay.
Yeah.
Now there is the ongoing assessments as well. I'll come back to that in a minute. But the exam is marked out of 100. The MCQs account for 40 points. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you have 4 long questions, but you're only going to do 2 of them, okay? Or we're only going to score you. I'll talk about more about that in a minute, but we're going to score you on 2 of them, okay? And you get 30 points for each of them, okay? So that gets you the 100, okay? Then what we do is we convert that 100 into a score out of 70, okay? So the actual exam is worth 70, okay? So we're going to give you a score of 70, and then we're going to add back in your 2 assignments, and we're going to add back in the average score that you got over the 4 short tests as well. Okay, so 10 points for the short test, 10 points for assignment 1, 10 points for assignment 2. Add that to your 70, and that gives you a final score of 100. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, and you do need to, I think Declan would have covered this off earlier, you do need to pass the actual exam. Okay, and the pass mark is 40. Okay, but genuinely, if you have a good blast at the MCQs, you're well on the way to getting the marks you need. Okay.
Okay.
So it's very, very, very doable. Okay, but we want you to do more than pass. So let's talk about the longer questions as well. So there's 4 longer questions in there as well. Okay. Now where are my details? Just give me a minute. Okay, so here we have it. Okay, so in the real exam, there is going to be a question from module 3. And it's going to be from the early part of module 3. Okay.
Okay.
First half of module 3, there is going to be 1 question. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
There's going to be also a question from module 2. And again, it is going to be from the early part of module 2. Makes it sound like I gave up about halfway through the modules, but that's just a coincidence, okay? So module 3, first half of module 3, that'll get you a question, okay? If you know that area well, that'll get you a question. And if you go to module 2 and you do the first half of module 2, that'll also get you a question, okay?
Okay.
Now, the third question is from module 3, and again, it is from the early part of module 3. So guess what? By studying half a module, if you know that really well and you've really prepped and really prepared for it, you would potentially have your 2 questions, okay? Now, there is a risk in doing that. If that's all you do, you know, if you just don't like the phrasing of one of the questions or you draw a blank, you might be a little bit stuck. So you may want to go a little bit further than that. But that said, you know, if you're really confident on how well you know the first half of module 3, you have a good opportunity to score well, okay?
Sorry, question 3 is on module 3.
Yeah, now they may not fall in exactly that way, but there are 2 questions that come from the first half of module 3, and there is 1 question that comes from the first half of module 2.
Okay.
Okay. And then lastly, we have a question from module 4. Okay. Now, module 4, a chunk of the early part of module 4 deals with customer visits, which we've just dealt with in the mock exam. Okay, so it's on customer visits. Okay, that's on the mock exam. Okay, that's not there. Okay, now if you feel you can bring it into any other question, by all means do it. There's no wrong answers, but the customer visits is not the material that we're looking for. We are looking for the rest of the module. Okay, so the rest of the module will cover things like, you know, it's really the tail end of collections. It's kind of when things really go wrong. You've got liquidation, you've got examinership, you have got receivership, you have kind of debtors meetings and things like that. It's kind of the tail end of the collections process where maybe you're trying to recover your money and you may not be dealing with business with the customer again. Okay. So the stuff in module 4 that is not on the customer visits, that's the type of stuff that we're covering, and that's the type of stuff that's on the exam. Okay. Now, some general guidance, not specifically related to any one of the questions, but some general guidance. I think Declan did reliably inform me, he mentioned this earlier, it's not a scavenger hunt, okay? So it's not a case of, okay, Paul is asking a question on, I don't know, terms and conditions, or something, there's terms and conditions, and we copy 5 pages and we paste it in. That's not what we're looking for, okay? We are looking for, there's nothing wrong with putting in the information from the notes, but we want it in your own words, okay? And we want it explained in a way that says, okay, this student knows all about terms and conditions because they have written it in their own, they've read it and they have given it back to us in our own word, and they have answered the question that we've actually asked. So it's not a scavenger hunt to find the section and then copy and paste it in and then we're done, okay? That's not what we're looking for, okay? Examples would be great, okay? All right. You know, you guys have experience in your fields, okay? You will have encountered customers that remind you that you will be reminded of when you're reading the notes, okay? You know, we're certainly not looking for you to break any confidentiality. So if the customer is called ABC Limited, don't say, well, I have customer ABC Limited. Just say I have a customer and here's what happened and here's how I dealt with it. And it ties in, if it ties in well to the notes, and you clearly show an understanding of the notes, you're really heading for strong marks there. Okay, I love examples. Okay, and I'm the one correcting it. So if the examples are in there, you really are looking for heading for strong marks. Okay, so examples are great. Okay, study all 4 modules for the MCQs. I said that already, so that's done and dusted. And the last thing I'll say is just in terms of the ongoing assessment. If we're in pretty good shape, but if there are any of you who still have some of those assignments to hand in, I can still accept them. I can probably accept them up to about Thursday. Okay. By the time you guys finish your exam next Saturday, I'm into exam mode and it's correct. Do the exams, total up the marks and get them across to Declan. Okay. So I won't really realistically have time to go back and start looking at assignments again. But if you get the assignments to me, but between now and then, I'm good. So if you get the assignments to me, if you still owe them by kind of Wednesday, Thursday, I can still correct them and get them back to you. Okay. and most importantly, count the marks for you. And I think that's about it. If I'm able to, I might. No, I doesn't look like I can stop the recording. So if you're comfortable asking questions while being recorded, then by all means go ahead and ask away. If you're not, I am obviously on the email during the week, so you're free to drop me any emails that you want me to do. If you want me to look at anything and say, okay, here's my sample answer, am I on the right track there? That's obviously fine as well. I'll certainly do my, be realistic, I suppose. If you send it to me 9 o'clock Friday night, you're probably not going to get it back in time for the exam. But if you do send it earlier in the week, I should be able to give you some feedback. Certainly no obligation, but if there's anything you want me to look at to say, am I on the right track or am I completely wrong? I can obviously do that.
Paul, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
So see the way for my assignments and stuff, I done it from credit union perspective. Can I do that for the exam as well?
Absolutely. I mean, I will say I haven't worked in the credit union myself, but obviously I'm very familiar with them. But that's not your fault. So absolutely, if you want to build in exam, if that's where your examples come from, that's perfectly acceptable. Put them in, yeah.
Perfect. And another question I just had really quickly. So will we be told how long it has to be, like word wise, or?
Yeah, good question. And it's always one that I regularly get asked, but I never volunteer proactively. I'm sorry about that. So I mean, a key point to remember is it's not the assignments. Okay, I mean the assignments I've gotten through have been very high quality, so well done on that. Okay, but it's not the assignments. Okay, so we're not looking for the 1,500 words that we were looking for in the assignments. Realistically, I mean, what I tend to get is, the better answers tend to be maybe in the region of 2 pages. Okay. What they go over 1 page and maybe go into a second page and maybe even in some cases come towards the end of a second page. I think a page of typing is probably maybe about 400 words or so. Okay, if you got 200, if you got 2 of those, you tend to do well. I will say the students that write more tend to do better than those that are too short. But that said, we're looking, it's quality, not quantity. We're looking for, if you're, we can tell the students who really understand it because they explain it and they just move on succinctly without kind of overdoing it, from the people who maybe write 3 times as much but are basically rehashing the same point 3, 4, 5 times and just repeating themselves. So it tends to be people who write more tend to do better. But that said, there's nothing wrong with kind of just being brief, to the point, and making it say, having a scenario where at the end of every sentence you say, yep, that's a good point, yep, that's a good point. And as a result, your score is ticking along,
Okay, perfect. So roughly around 2 pages, that would be.
Yeah, I wouldn't normally see people go over that. I mean, do manage your time. You only have half an hour for each of the long questions, okay? So by the time you have your thoughts together, and so on, the clock is ticking. So you do sometimes see people who score really well on one question, and then there's very little time left for the other question. So that can be problematic. Now, if you get one really, really good question and you've done well in the MCQs and you pass your last question, you're probably still headed for a pretty decent score. But ideally you'd have it fairly well balanced. You'd have about maybe half an hour for each of them,
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Thanks.
Okay. So Declan is not going to be returning, so it's up to me to wave you off on this occasion. But listen, best of luck. I am around. Any questions, just email them. I'm happy to answer them. Any remaining assignments, happy for you to send them through, and I'll correct them and get them back to you. And on that, best of luck. And Declan, we'll see you next Saturday, I believe.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Cheers,
Enjoy the
Paul,
day.
thanks.
Enjoy the day,
Thank
everybody.
you.
You're welcome. No problem. Give me a shout if you need anything. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Good luck, guys. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.